Welcome to the Bare Naked Shrinks.
Hello, and welcome to the Bare Naked Shrinks with me, Dr. Danny, and my fabulous co-host, Dr. Courtney.
Hey.
We are super excited to welcome our very first guest this season, Dr. Britt Bohrer.
Hello.
Dr. Britt is a licensed clinical psychologist and is the Co-Occurring Disorders Track Coordinator at the UCSD Eating Disorders Center for Treatment and Research. Welcome, Doc. In a bit, Britt is going to talk to us about substance use disorders among those living with eating disorders. But to start things off, let's get into our
cake and crap.
Okay, so my cake this week, I feel like they're always about my kids. Well, my cake right now is that in honor of us talking about substance use, we are cheersing over here. Me and Courtney are cheersing Dr. Britt, and she's at the office and is being a good, she's drinking coffee. So that's my cake right now. But my cake of the week is the public schools here in LA. They do these testing at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the year. And this year, Wilder tested nationally in the 98th percentile in math. I'm so proud of him. I mean, he's always been really good at math. I'll tell like a little tidbit. Like literally when he was 3, I was like on the toilet or something, and kids love to come see you on the toilet. And he came in and he was like, "Hey mom, did you know that 3 times is 6? And I was like, my mother freaking 3-year-old just did multiplication. So he's always had it, but I'm just super proud of him. And oh my crap, I was showing them before you. I don't know if you can see, but I have these little crazy little hairs. It's always something with my hair every episode. Okay, so I was using this bleach stuff called Sun Babe.
Thank God I didn't use it.
Yeah, I tried to convince Courtney to, but that wasn't the real kiss of death. The kiss of death was doing that and then going back and getting my hair professionally lightened. My hairdresser is also my friend, thank goodness. And I went to see her and we were celebrating both of our birthdays. So she was like, I'm not going to be too mean to you because we were celebrating our birthdays. But she was like, this is terrible. She's like, you're going to have breakage and you're probably going to end up, I'm going to have an Anna Wintour bob. That's just where we're going to be.
Are you serious?
Yeah. She was like, your hair is going. So that happened.
You could pull it off though.
And I feel like I can. And I've been on this hair journey because between having my second kid 3 years ago, losing a bunch of hair, having diabetes, which also makes you very unhealthy, and then losing weight after having the baby, and then going through menopause, this is all in a span of like 3 years. My hair has been through the ringer. And thank goodness for, this is our very first.
What the find?
Part of my hair journey was figuring out that LA water is terrible and it's super hard. And so I got a shower filter. Plug for the eSkin shower filter. Go to our website, the WTF promos, and you can get 15% off. But I had gotten my hair so healthy and then I did this. So I'm really sad. But you know what? If that's the worst thing in the world right now for me, then I'm doing fabulous. So, okay, Courtney, what's yours?
Okay, my cake. I had a really good weekend again last weekend. Lots of fun friend stuff. Saturday specifically was amazing. Did really fun things with like multiple close friends. So I'm kind of cheating again. That day was really fun. I felt like so fulfilled. But to switch it up, what I'm going to say this week is I made a reel on my lesbian psychologist account.
You went viral.
With some friends. We did. We got like over 1 million views in 24 hours.
What?
I know.
Which video is this?
So that was like really satisfying because I came up with that within like less than 5 minutes. I was like, this would be funny. And it took like 3 minutes to film. Yeah, it was really
You're
fun.
talking about the prideful one, right? Is that what we're
not the No.
Oh my God,
Have you not seen
one.
this is what DBT therapist said during the debate?
Oh yeah, I did see that too. I was talking about your
That's
other
the
one though.
That's the one that went viral.
You're double blowing up then. That's so cool.
So that was fun. I've had a lot of fun actually, like seeing the people that have watched it and stuff. Jason Lavender, who will be on our podcast in a couple weeks, emailed me yesterday and was like, "Oh my God!" Like the subject line was completely random. He was like, "Oh my God, my niece just sent me this reel."
So awesome.
Yeah.
Small eating disorder DBT world. Okay, what about crap?
Oh, okay. So my crap, I don't feel like I think the crap is that just like generally that humans need sleep. I wish that I didn't need as much sleep because I have a lot of fun things that I want to do all the time. I have a lot of people that I want to see and I just can't fit everything into the time that I have. So I just wish that I didn't need as much sleep as I
Get a little bit of hypomania like I have when I'm really excited about something. I mean, it's not actual hypomania, it's more ADHD hyperfocus, but it feels like a little hypomania. And ever since we started this podcast, I've just been having so much fun doing all the editing and all the art stuff that I've been waking up at like 4 or 5 in the morning. So I've been literally getting by on 6 hours of sleep and being okay. I'm usually someone that needs like 10 hours. Apparently, I just needed to be creative for all my life, and then I didn't need as much sleep. Okay, well, how about you, Britt? This is your chance to share with us.
Okay. Well, chronologically, I'll start with the crap. So I live in San Diego, and usually I don't even have to open my weather app or look at a thermometer because the temperature is pretty much 70 and sunny all year. However, we just went through a heat wave, and last weekend it was 96 degrees, and my dog, just by default, is wearing a fur coat. He's very, very fluffy, right? So we couldn't really take him outside much because it's too hot. He's going to overheat. The asphalt is too hot for his little feet. So what he decided to do was to take revenge craps on my bedroom floor multiple times.
That's an actual crap.
Yes. Really heard me mad at him though, because he's just so cute. And my cake, which I'm looking forward to, is after this, I'm going to go home and one of my friends / colleagues is going to meet me for dinner and drinks. And they're going to go to an improv show with a bunch of friends. So I'm really excited for that. Improv is super upregulating for me. I love laughing. Should be fun.
You need to come visit me in LA and we can go to the Upright Citizens Brigade.
I would love that.
Super, like, people go on to SNL from there.
Did I tell y'all that I did improv this spring?
No.
Was it good? Was it fun?
I had a great time. I potentially was one of the best ones in the level 1 class, just FYI, because I'm funny naturally.
I could see you being very good at that.
You are. I feel like, Britt, you would be too. You're just so dry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there's a certain...
I'm thinking about it. I would like to do it. I think that it would be fulfilling. I think I'd have fun. I think I would actually have some talent. The idea of adding something else to my schedule is overwhelming. So I might just have to rip the Band-Aid off and just do it.
Then you might need less sleep. You might get super into it and get upregulated. Okay, so for today, I thought we would revisit what the homework assignment, homework from Courtney, which was to look at the Kinsey scale and see where you might fall and contemplate that within ourselves. Honestly, I had never done that before, which is really interesting. Okay, so to remind you all, it goes 0 to 6, with 6 being fully homosexual and 0 being fully heterosexual, with 3 being equally, and then there's 1 predominantly hetero, 2 predominantly, what does the incidentally homosexual mean? Like, oops, I fell on a penis? Those are all very confusing to me, but let's just say 0 and 6 are exclusive and the 3 is equally very bi. I would say I'm predominantly heterosexual. I don't know. You suss this out for me. I feel pretty much like 0. Speaking of penises, I really couldn't give that up. However, I did have one kissing experience that I will share. What?
Just remembering when we had this conversation that I said, I think it was with the 3 of us, and you were like, I can't give up penis.
I did. I think that we did talk about it. When I was in college, and me and one of my best friends, who I'm still friends with to this day, Sarah, we took a cab. This was pre-Uber because this was like the year 2000. I don't even know how it came up, but we decided to make out. This poor cab driver, he's probably like, what is going on? And neither of us had ever kissed a girl. So we started kissing. And I was like, I can't, I'm not into it. And she was like, yeah. So I don't know if that makes me a 0 or a 1. I feel 0.
I feel like it's flexible. Like, I don't think that you need, I think that one thing that I mentioned about the Kinsey scale is that it is like, it kind of limits that fluidity, right? And so I think that it is kind of limiting to some regard. I think it's a helpful way to think about sexuality, and I don't think that it's perfect by any means.
Right. Okay, so how about you?
I would say probably a 5. Like, I think I'm pretty only into women. But again, this is challenging because if you look at the Kinsey scale, looks at past behavior, right? And if we look at past sexual behavior, I've mostly been with men. So I think if I think about it that way, I'd probably not be a 5. Where I'm at right now in my life, I really don't feel any attraction to men. So I think I say a 5 because I identify as a lesbian and I've also been with men. So that feels like maybe middle pathy for where I'm at right now. And I still think that it can ebb and flow. There's so much fluidity in sexuality.
And then the other thing that, because our episode this week is called Mary Jane's Last Dance, I'm having so much fun also with the names of the episodes and finding appropriate ones. And I thought
Way too much fun.
this was so appropriate for
Way too
Britt
much
because
fun.
she is a huge Tom Petty. In fact, the aforementioned dog she was speaking of is literally named Pom Petty. The best name ever. He's a Pom and his name is Pom Petty. So I wanted us to talk about that music video because I revisited it. Do you know which one I'm talking about? The Mary Jane's Last Dance with Kim Basinger?
I don't think I've seen it in a while because the first thing that popped into my head was the music video for Don't Come Around Here No More. And
is that the Alice in Wonderland one?
Yes. No. Yes. I don't know. It's 4:28 on a Friday.
Well,
my brain.
Okay. Also, I should say Britt is the same age as Courtney, right? You're 10 years younger than me too.
Yeah. So we're like Britt and I are like 5 days apart.
Oh, that's so cool.
And Britt also is sitting in my old office. So much nostalgia. Very nostalgic. Very nostalgic.
I revisited the video because I remember really liking it. I realized it came out in 1994. So this all adds up. I was 14 then. Y'all were 4. Of course you don't remember when this came out.
We were 5, actually. We were probably 5.
And it was the height of MTV where everyone had music videos, and Kim Basinger plays this corpse. It's just a really beautifully shot. Then I was like, how old was Kim Basinger in that? She was 41 then. I'm older than Kim Basinger was in that video. That's so, but you guys got to watch it. It's a real masterpiece. When is the last time, Britt, you saw Tom Petty in concert?
I've never seen him. I was supposed to go in Kansas City because I was in grad school in 2017. I had a crack of dawn flight to Prague the next day for the ISED conference. And so I was like, I can't make that work because Lawrence is an hour away from the airport. And I chose not to go and was like, well, he's going to be around forever, right? And then fast forward, through 4 or 5 months, and it expired.
Wow.
Thanking myself for that, but there's so many people I've met that didn't go. It was supposed to be his last show and I couldn't go for XYZ reason and can't forgive myself sort of situation. So
can I make you envious? I saw him at a festival in 2017, 3 months before he passed away. A huge festival. My friends were playing the festival, so I had VIP access, but I didn't meet him. I didn't want to be weird, but it was great. It was awesome.
Newsflash, you're still weird, but one of the reasons why I like you.
Let's get down to the educational portion of the day.
Mary Jane's Last Dance.
As we are listening to Dr. Britt, don't forget to go to barenakedshrinks.com to check out all of the visuals that we will refer to here. I am going to zip it and hand it over to Dr. Britt.
Well, I'm really excited to be talking about substance use and substance use disorders in folks who have eating disorders. I will be using the term co-occurring disorders. I may forget and shorten that to COD, which is basically just means the co-occurrence of one psychiatric disorder and at least one substance use disorder. And for the purpose of this discussion, I'll be talking about substance use disorders and eating disorders. I'm really passionate about this topic. As Danny mentioned, coordinate our COD track for our adult patients in our DBT, PHP, and IOP program. And so any patients who come in endorsing substance use, even if it's not problematic or they don't, want to target it, just goes on my radar to just kind of explore with them. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. What I want to say is I was quite surprised at the number of folks who walk through our doors who have substance use issues or concerns alongside the eating disorder. More often than not, I'd say that they are interrelated. So the substance use, whatever their substance of choice is, serves some sort of function either to interact with the eating disorder or the substance use behaviors serve similar functions to the eating disorder behaviors. So usually what I see is that they're very interrelated. Sometimes they can be separate and they're really, really common. I'm surprised at the number of people who endorse substance use and the number of folks with eating disorders who have substance use disorders as well. We know that folks who have an eating disorder are 4 times more likely to develop a substance use disorder than women in the general population who don't have an eating disorder or a substance use disorder. And substance use issues can affect up to 50% of folks with eating disorders, which is way higher number than I was anticipating. I think that times either disorder actually can go, undetected, or, I don't want to talk about that kind of thing. And because both disorders, depending on the substance of choice, can be somewhat normalized in our society, right? Like drinking is a pretty normal thing to do in certain situations here, as well as,
including on a podcast.
Including on the podcast, except for me. But I am consuming a substance because this is caffeinated.
Ah, touche.
Yes. So what I want to say, usually folks, not everyone for sure, but usually we see substance use issues in folks with eating disorders who their eating disorder behaviors fall on like a bulimic spectrum, and folks who tend to engage in binge purge behaviors, other sorts of like emotion dysregulation, impulsive risky behaviors tend to go hand in hand with substance use behaviors. I, like Danny, have notes, so let me just make sure that I'm giving you all the juicy details that I wanted to. We know that eating disorders have a very high mortality rate. We also know that substance use disorders do as well. And as you can imagine, if these two types of disorders are co-occurring within the same person, the effects are additive. So somebody who has an eating disorder is at higher risk for mortality, as well as somebody with a substance use disorder. We know that when these two occur together, medical issues tend to occur earlier. They tend to be more severe. Suicide rates are higher. Co-occurring mental health and trauma-related disorders tend to be more severe, and treatment needs become greater. We know that folks who have co-occurring eating disorders and substance use disorders have higher rates of hospitalizations and have higher rates of rehospitalization for non-mental health issues. So this could be like physical health complications, things like that. This can be really burdensome for the person experiencing this, right? And for treatment centers providing treatment for these disorders. Something I want to say about that is that there are very, very few treatment centers who focus on both eating disorder care and substance use treatment, which is really a bummer. And what I want to say about that is that there's a couple of ways that we could treat substance use disorders in somebody with an eating disorder. We could say you need to treat your eating disorder and then you can work on your substance use disorder. We could say it the other way around, right? You need to get your substance use under control before we can do the eating disorder work. What we know about this is that it tends not to have great outcomes because of something we call the whack-a-mole effect. I've heard so many times, like, I've got a really good handle on my eating disorder, but I am using my substance way more frequently. Or, I've been sober for X amount of time, but my eating disorder behaviors are just off the charts, right? And so we call this the whack-a-mole effect. If one gets better, the other one gets worse. And I kind of think about that in terms of, an emotion regulation standpoint. A lot of the eating disorder behaviors, substance use behaviors can serve the function of trying to regulate one's emotions, right? Or cope with really challenging things or numb out, whatever the function is. And so it makes sense to me that if you're getting rid of one of these coping strategies, you might rely on the other one, right? So it makes sense to me why this happens. And we know that integrated care for eating disorders and substance use disorders tend to produce the best outcomes. So what integrated care looks like is we're targeting the eating disorder and the substance use disorder at the same time. I work in a DBT center, so we are equipped to do this. Not all treatment centers are set up for that, but this would be combining the interventions to target both at the same time. I like this approach for a number of reasons. One, yes, better outcomes. That's the goal. I think that it can really improve treatment delivery. You can generalize things across behaviors. It can improve the continuity of care. You don't have to be going to all these separate centers to target all these different things. It can reduce time, because if you've got to spend 3 months in an eating disorder treatment center and then go to your substance use treatment center, that's really burdensome. A lot of people do not have the capability to take that much time off of work or miss that much school or just miss out on their life that much. It does lower overall treatment costs, which I think is great for the person experiencing these disorders, and also just from, an insurance perspective. We know that it kind of creates this like no wrong door. Folks who come to our treatment center, for example, they come here because the eating disorder is primary, and they have the capability to target the substance use when they want, or maybe when it makes the most sense to in the context of their other behaviors that they're targeting on their hierarchy. Something I want to mention is that the most common substances of choice in folks who have eating disorders are, do you want to guess?
Alcohol and marijuana.
I say Adderall or stimulants.
I think that's one that can really go undetected because, again, it's really normalized. But caffeine can be used in such a disordered way in folks with eating disorders. We actually had a really cool talk this week in our recovery topics group where one of our dietitians came in and patients had submitted questions and just provided psychoeducation about why caffeine can't be a substitute for food, how it actually isn't giving you energy because there is no energy unit. Calories are an energy unit. And if you're just drinking black coffee, for example, that's one that I always assess for when folks come for eating disorder treatment. With the alcohol and marijuana, that's really tricky too, because depending on where you're at, right, and depending on how old you are, those are legal things, right? For folks over 21 in California, where I live, you can walk into a dispensary, you can walk into a liquor store, right? I think another one that's really common is nicotine. And then, of course, some of the other ones that you mentioned, Danielle, I think you said like stimulant, right? Whether that's cocaine or more prescribed ones like Adderall, something like that. We do see folks abusing those for either appetite suppression purposes, weight loss purposes, or if the person is restricting heavily, like I don't really have much energy to get through my day, let me take a stimulant that might help me get through the day. Certainly any sort of other sort of drug we see a lot. We sometimes see, opioid abuse, whether that's prescribed or illicit. Something that's really interesting with regards to eating disorders is that really, and this is why I like doing our assessments so much, is that the function of the substance use within person and between people can just be so different. So that's why I think it's really important to ask about the function of the person's substance use. I don't mean to pathologize all substance use. I'm not trying to say that either. We have folks who are here targeting their eating disorder and they're like, I vape nicotine every day. I can't work on that right now. And if the treatment team decides that that's fine, right? We do have to, take into context where people are in their recovery journey, but looking at the function is really important too. Something that stands out to me as well is polysubstance use. It's more likely that folks, if they have a substance use disorder, that they're probably going to have more than one substance that they use. It's really important to also explore, which one's more important to target first, or maybe which one impacts the eating disorder more, or which one's more life-threatening. Right? If somebody comes in and they're using alcohol and then also using nicotine, so we might say, look, we got to get a hold on the alcohol use. We can target the nicotine later. Just like eating disorders, substance use disorders impact virtually every single organ system in the body. It's really, really important to look out for these issues too, as folks may have varying levels of insight into the eating disorder and its overlap with their substance use.
I was thinking when you were talking too about, they also do PTSD a lot. Whenever you're treating PTSD, you want to be sure someone's not using substances or their eating disorder behaviors, because then they're not going to process their emotions. So that makes actually a lot of sense that you wouldn't want someone just working on the eating disorder because of the emotion regulation function of either behavior. You're really not going to make as much progress.
Totally. And it's not going to have the treatment dose that you want it to. If somebody is, doing their trauma work and immediately numbing out or trying to do it while under the influence or something like that. Unfortunately, we've got to sit with those really challenging emotions, and being able to have other strategies and skills on board is so important if we're going to do other sorts of work, PTSD, OCD, whatever it is, right?
When I've done DBTPE, I know a criteria that has been for individuals that do use substances is that we have to have abstinence for 2 hours before, 2 hours after, during sessions, and any type of exposure homework. Britt, one thing that you mentioned that I know we've had conversations about this offline like many times, and that I would love to hear your thoughts on this podcast, is this idea of when we think about things like alcohol and marijuana and even vaping or nicotine, these things are all legal. So when individuals come to your clinic, how do you identify what is problematic or not?
Yeah, do you use an assessment or is it a clinical interview?
Folks at our clinic complete upon admission what's called the brief addiction monitor, or BAM. It's behavioral frequency. So it's just asking, do you use this substance and how frequently in the last month? It's just a starting point. If anyone endorses any sort of substance use, I get flagged, and then I'll follow up with them. And that's where it's more of a clinical interview. I let them know that I'm not a cop. I'm not here to investigate. I truly just want to understand substance use and whether or not that's something that we could or should target while they're here. So I ask about what their substance use has looked like. I'm always sure that I prompt them to think about other classes of substances, because there have been times where folks will say, I have a problematic history with alcohol and with marijuana, and then that's it. And if I say, what about taking prescribed medicines as you're not supposed to, or something like that, and that can be, oh, I didn't think about that, right? I like to just make sure I'm covering all my bases. Like I mentioned before, what's really important for me to understand is, what is the function of the substance use?
Right.
Is it purely that you're going to an improv show after you record a podcast and you're going to have a beer while you watch improv? Or is it, I get home and I have had such a shitty day, I cannot stand to feel any emotions anymore, so I need to numb them out. That's very different. I also like to know, does the substance use interact with the eating disorder?
Right.
Are they separate? It may serve the function of, if I get really high and I get the munchies, then I can eat, right? I hear that a lot from our ARFID folks, actually. Is it if I'm drinking and my inhibitions are lowered, then I don't have as many eating disorder thoughts and I can complete my meal. So I just want to know the function and also if it interacts with the eating disorder. That's where I start.
That's one thing that I've had a hard time with, is that especially at UCSD, when we would see a lot of individuals that are in college, we know that drinking a lot is, in quotes, normalized in college. How do we find that a lot of the drinking behavior in college meets the definition of binge drinking or even alcoholism, right? So how do we find like that middle path between, okay, this is like somewhat normal with what you're doing, and we want to make sure that you're like functioning in a healthy way. I think like what you mentioned in terms of the function is really important to think about. When I've worked with individuals that use substances and then also have an eating disorder, I think one thing, like you mentioned, Britt, that I've really tried to unpack and identify is, how do these two interact? I know some individuals that I've worked with have, for example, used drinking as a way to help them purge. They're kind of like, I only purge if I drink, or drinking helps them eat. I think what's important to identify is, how do those interact? And if they do, then maybe we need to identify what's helpful or not in that regard.
The other thing that comes to mind, Courtney, and I'm glad you mentioned that with regards to the college student thing with drinking, which is pretty normalized on college campuses, necessarily specific to that. I think it really applies to what you just said, but asking them what they think about their substance use habits. Do they bother them? Are they causing them problems? Have there been any injuries, or have other people said that they're concerned? We know that if somebody doesn't want to target their substance use, it's not that there can't be movement there, but it's a lot harder. So gauging their insight and also their motivation to even think about or look at these things is important. Something else is that we're not an abstinence only program. So folks can feel like, and I don't want to talk about this because I don't want to be judged. So meeting folks where they're at in terms of, are you ready to target this? And what is your insight into how it impacts the eating disorder or not, are also questions that I think are really important.
I'm not really a substance use person. It's a little overwhelming for me. I think I feel about it the way a lot of people feel about treating eating disorders. It feels very out of control to me. I remember back when I was in college, the name wasn't around, but maybe 10, 15 years later, drunk orexia. Have you heard of that term, where you restrict in order to accommodate for the calories that you're going to consume, which obviously is double danger because you don't have any food? So I was wondering, is that still as common of a thing as it used to be?
I'm not sure about prevalence, and I know some folks have thoughts about that term in and of itself. Regardless of what you call it, it is something that shows up. Referencing back to the dietitian speaking to our patients about substance use and eating disorders earlier this week, I was really glad that he focused on why alcohol cannot be part of the meal plan. A lot of times folks will say, I had, 2 beers. Why can't that be my night snack? So it was really cool to hear him break down why is not a thing that we recommend. But yes, and like you said, Danny, that pattern can be so dangerous. Yeah, so there's a lot of scary things that can happen with that sort of pattern.
I had a roommate who was also my friend. My college years are what sort of prompted my interest in eating disorders, because every one of my roommates ended up having an eating disorder. I didn't pre-choose it. I had one roommate who had pretty severe bulimia nervosa and active alcoholism. She seized right in front of me. It was so scary. It just has stuck with me. The combo of substance use and eating disorders is so dangerous and scary.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, Dr. Britt. Amazing. That was really informative and interesting. I hope a lot of people got some great insight out of it. So now, to have a little bit more fun, we are going to
interview the expert.
Similar to Courtney, I've gotten to know you through the eating disorder world. And also, we have a fun connection that we both went to the University of Kansas, although we never overlapped. And we're both Midwestern girls. I wanted to, you're from North Dakota, yes?
Yes.
I want to ask you, what was it like growing up in North Dakota? It seems like a foreign land, and I only think of Fargo.
It's cold. It is cold in the winters. Growing up in North Dakota, let's see. I think it's a lot like other Midwestern states that I've been in. Usually when other people hear that I'm from North Dakota, they say, I've never met someone from North Dakota, or I've never been to North Dakota. And you know,
I'm all of the above. No, I have been there, but like drove through on the way to like somewhere else.
Yes, that's usually why people are there, if at all. It's very flat. There's a lot of farming. It gets very cold in the winter, so we got to be creative about how to stay occupied. Hockey's big there. We don't have a professional sports team, so everyone either latches on to Minnesota, which usually is disappointing. Sorry, Minnesota, I love you. Or just picks a random team. I like visiting, but I would not want to go back because of how cold it gets.
Where did you go to undergrad?
I went to the University of North Dakota in Grand Forks, which is even closer to the Canadian border than Bismarck, where I grew up. And then from there, I moved to Indiana and started grad school at Purdue University. And from there, transferred to the University of Kansas. So I did a little like Midwestern tour before moving to
Okay, cool. I didn't realize that you started at Purdue. Did your advisor move from Purdue to KU? Is that what happened? Did you like Lawrence? Do you miss it?
I loved Lawrence.
Me too.
Really loved living there. I lived there for 5 years. It's such a fun, quirky, cute little town and has such personality. I think that still persists. Like when I've gone back to visit or see things on social media, really tugs at my heartstrings. I absolutely loved living there. Really enjoyed my time at KU, Rock Chalk. That said, cannot beat the weather in San Diego other than last weekend, like I mentioned.
Right. What restaurant do you miss the most?
Ooh.
Lawrence has really good food.
No.
It's shocking.
Probably Henry T's, honestly. Love their wings. And they brew their own beer, so that's cool too. There's a lot on Mass Street too, like Merchants. I was in a steel tip dart league when I lived there, and so I really liked the Red Lion Tavern when we got to play darts there. But the only food they serve is popcorn.
I miss Free State. I miss their cheese soup.
Yep.
And I also miss India Palace. I am sorry. I have been to so many Indian restaurants and nothing beats India Palace. People may be shocked to hear that, but it is literally the best Indian food ever.
My grad lab mate, Dr. Kelsey Hagen, shout out. She's at VCU now, but she would order from there so much that she would call and he would start speaking and they would say, "Hi, Kelsey," same thing. I knew her order. It is so good. I do miss that place too.
I used to go on dates there a lot with my boyfriend that I was with, and they like knew me by name too. The lunch buffet, chef's kiss. Okay. Anyway, so I know you love classic rock. Also, we talked about this a little bit earlier, and that's a shared interest because that's my favorite music genre too. Why do you like it? Like, what about it resonates with you?
I don't think I've ever been asked this.
I'm going to interrupt. Sorry, Britt. Yeah, I consider myself kind of like the Terry Gross of psychologists with my questions. So you're welcome.
Okay. Because I think the era that I tend to like the most, which is like late 60s through whenever Kurt Cobain died, 94, I think there was just so many innovations coming to be with regards to technology in music recording and just production, anything like that. I also think that there's so much creativity, like classic rock as a genre. There's so much within that umbrella. And
Dark Side of the Moon, Wizard of Oz. If you haven't done it, you better.
The other thing is, I don't remember what this is from, but recently somebody was like, do you think that there can be infinite like musical endeavors, or like is it going to just be a repetition and like what is it called, repurposing over time? I do like that. I think that genre and that era, I mean, it's classic, right? And so I think it serves as the foundation for so many other things, and music inspiration today as well.
Do you have an anthem? Like if you had to pick a classic rock anthem for yourself?
Well, okay, my initial thought was that it should be a Queen song since that's my favorite band. There's so many to choose from. I don't know why, but what came to mind was a Tom Petty song, Shocker. And maybe it's because I listened to it on my way in this morning. I won't back down. I don't know. I think that could
That's
be
a
one
good
because
one.
it is, yeah, I don't know. It's inspirational and I feel like I'm tenacious and
Well, that's what I meant. Yeah, of course, it's a good song, but I meant like that's a good anthem. I love it. Awesome. Okay. I was going to have you talk about Tom Petty, but we kind of already did. What did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a kid in Bismarck?
really, this is a judgment, really lame things. I wanted to be a dentist for a while. I don't know where that came from. And then I wanted to be a pediatrician. Fast forward, I do not enjoy working with children. I don't know how that would have worked. A lot of different things. I've always thought it would be really cool to be a rock star. I'm not talented enough to have gone that route though.
You should check out my reels. Okay. All right. I have like two more questions, but I could talk to you all day because I love you, Britt. Why the interest in substance use?
That came to be because our director, when I was an intern, I was like walking in the hall to go get my lunch, and she was like, "You're coming to the COD meeting later, right?" Not a question. So I just like went on a whim and thought it was really interesting. And I like working with patients who present more under control, big emotions, a lot of impulsive, risky behaviors, and substance use just really fits with that.
Okay, last question. What is something people would be surprised to learn or know about you? Any like hidden talents, any past lives?
Well, I already mentioned my tenure as the captain of the Steel Tip Dart League team. I'm not good, by the way. That was purely just to have fun. And oh my God, Danielle, Sid, our shared clinical supervisor, was also in that league. And
Best supervisor of all time. We love you, Sid Schnucky. You changed my life.
I got to like go to supervision and then be like, okay, see you at 7. So that was really fun. What would people be surprised to know? Well, I know that I have a resting bitch face and I can be prickly. And I am actually a big softie. I cry so easily. The other day I cried because somebody had a pet raccoon I'd never met. And this raccoon passed away. And I saw it on my Instagram and I was like inconsolable for 10 minutes.
Is it somebody that you knew?
No, I have like big emotions that are tied, especially to animals. But like my exterior, I mean, I've got tattoos and I mentioned the resting bitch face. I wear a lot of black or like colors.
Show your fellow pointy nailed person. Yeah.
That's something. The other, you asked for one, I'm giving you like 10. The other one that stands out is that, I actually talked about this in my DBT team this morning, is that I asked them to list like what they're afraid of, just in general. My biggest fear is butterflies.
What? Why?
I bet Courtney has a butterfly tattoo.
No,
I don't, but I foresee that in my future for sure.
you can't tell where they're going, which scares me. Same with moths. They're not going to hurt me.
But why are you afraid of them?
A visceral response. They terrify me. I duck. I like go into one of these. One time I was like walking Petty. I had to like, hand him off and run the other way because there was a monarch coming our. I can recognize that this is irrational.
Love it. I love this. I love this sharing. And I also love that you shared the resting bee face because I thought Britt hated me for about 5 years.
Raise your hand if you thought Britt hated you for a while. I feel like if we polled like most of our friends, everybody would.
I'm going to do a Spotify poll when I post this. Did you ever think Britt hated you?
I think like everyone in the eating disorder field that we all like mutually know would probably raise their hand.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm glad to know I'm not alone.
Can I say one more thing on that though?
Yeah.
I was in my office the other day and my door was open and a patient stopped by and she goes, her therapist is someone who I think is a future guest and Danny's best friend, Leslie. This patient stops by and she goes, I just have to share with you that Leslie and I were talking about your resting bitch face in session today. I was like,
Sounds about right.
why?
Well, do y'all remember it was Carly's goodbye? Did you go to Carly?
I don't know
Goodbye?
that I did.
So remember when I was in the office where Anna and Susan were, and you know, I love to keep my door open and say hi and chat. And when I don't know people, I tend to be very shy and not smiley, apparently. So I was in that office for a year, and Anna at the time told their team that her goal for the year was to get me to say hi to her. And you know how long it took? Apparently about a year. I found this out at Carly's going away party. And I was like, this is mortifying.
You have a little bit of a Regina George, the Renee Rapp version going for you, I have to say.
It's just because I have high social anxiety myself.
Yeah, that is a great point. That is a great point. Thanks again, Britt, for joining us. It was so great talking to you, and I hope everyone got to know you a little bit better because you are awesome. I wanted to ask you if you had homework. You better work.
Work it, y'all.
Assignment.
Yes, it's two-pronged, and one is more a call to action and one is more of a reminder, I guess. The first one being for clinicians, even if you don't think that substance use could be at play, it really does not hurt to ask. I'd encourage that for the folks that you work with. For people who experience co-occurring disorders, I have seen such amazing turnaround with both sets of issues, both the eating disorder and the substance use, and so recovery is possible. It can seem daunting or insurmountable, and it really is possible.
Thank you again, Britt, for being our very first guest. I'm so happy you were able to chat with us. Remember to download your weekly homework. If you are curious about your own alcohol or substance use, go to the Homework tab at barenakedshrinks.com. Mary Jane's Last Dance, Episode 3, and you will find both an alcohol and a drug screening measure. Additionally, learn the coping skill urge surfing to help manage unwanted behaviors like drug or alcohol misuse, binging, purging, etc. Stay tuned for our next episode, Roller Coaster, when Dr. Leslie Anderson, also of the UCSD Eating Disorders Center for Treatment and Research, will introduce us to the use of dialectical behavior therapy for eating disorders. And if you like what you've seen, heard so far, please follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Talk soon.
See y'all next time.